So today we're going to take a look at the oxidation and reduction reactions in cellular respiration, as we talked about in class. So what we're going to start with first are the molecules involved. So we have glucose, which is C6H12O6, and we have six oxygen molecules. And during cellular respiration, those are converted into six CO2 molecules and six water molecules. So what we'll do is we'll compare the structure of glucose to the structure of CO2 to see what kind of reaction glucose undergoes during this process. So if we take a look at the left-hand side, we can see that we're taking a look at the relative number of oxygens to carbons. So we can see here that glucose has a lower number of oxygens per carbon as compared to CO2, which has a higher number of oxygens per carbon. Similarly, there are more hydrogens per carbon in glucose and there are less hydrogens per carbon in CO2. And so when we take a look at it, we can see that the carbon ends up with more share of electrons in the molecule in glucose than it does in CO2, because in CO2 those electrons are being taken away by the clouds of the oxygen atoms. So glucose, as it's converted to CO2, undergoes what's called an oxidation reaction because glucose is initially reduced, and as it's converted to CO2, it becomes oxidized, so it undergoes oxidation. What we'll see with these oxidation reactions is they often go hand in hand with reduction reactions. So we're going to take a look at the other two pairs of molecules that we see here. So we see oxygen on the left-hand side, and oxygen has maximum number of bonds to other oxygens, and it has no hydrogen at all, so it has a decreased number of bonds to hydrogen relative to water. And when we take a look at water, we can see that the oxygen molecules have less bonds to each other. What we see is that they now have increased number of bonds to hydrogen instead. So that is reduced relative to the molecular oxygen. So oxygen undergoes reduction during cellular respiration. So the oxygen is oxidized and the water is relatively reduced. So that was just a quick overview of the oxidation and reduction reactions in cellular respiration.